In the previous video, I talked about developing values around my darkest dark or my lightest light. As you watch me work, really look at what I'm doing with my hands and with my blending tool. It's not that I never, ever hold the blending tool like a pencil where I'm using the point. I may do that occasionally, but seldom do I do that. Typically, I'm going to use the side of my blending tool, so not the point, but the side. I will also use my fingers occasionally to blend. Because the scale of this drawing is pretty small, I'm really not using my fingers a whole lot to blend with in this drawing. But typically, my favorite fingers to blend with are my middle digit and my pinky. If you catch me using my pinky or my middle digit, look to see how I'm holding my pinky or middle digit. What part of the finger do you imagine is touching the surface of the paper? You'll also notice with my hands as I'm working on this drawing is that I will use my pinky as a kickstand to help me balance. This is going to prevent me putting the side of my palm, the side of my hand, up against the paper and smearing. That's what I am doing with my pinky. I'm using it as a balancing device. The part of my pinky that's touching the paper is actually my nail. And you don't need to have a long nail. It's just the edge of the nail is going to be what touches the paper. The edge of your nail will not smear the charcoal. Notice that when I work on developing the details in my drawing, that I also have a focus on trying to maintain the shadow area to read as shadow mass. I don't want to develop so much detail in the light mass that it starts to look like shadow. I don't want to make my shadow mass so light that it starts to look like light mass. So we want to ever so often, occasionally, look back and forth and say, what does it look like? Have I gone too far in making my light mass dark? Do I need to take it down? Do I need to make my dark mass darker? So it's important to always ask yourself, what does it look like? An old device that artists have done in the past to help see values is to squint your eyes down really low so you can only see vague shapes and no details. It helps you see light and shadow a little bit more clearly. I think technology offers us a really good opportunity. If you take a photo of your still life, convert it to black and white, look at it. Ask yourself, how close are you getting to the values you see in the photograph? Now, the photograph is not going to be 100% accurate representation of what you see in real life. There's going to be some discrepancies, but it's going to be pretty close. So you can use it as a guide to helping you if you're feeling completely lost and you don't know what to do. Sometimes looking at a black and white photograph can be a good jumping off point. In the drawing, I forgot to draw in the edge of the black fabric, so I take some time using my Vine charcoal to carefully sketch in the placement of the black fabric. I'm keeping my hand relatively light in pressure so that if I need to, I can change the shapes a little bit. Notice that I filled that whole little shape in with the Vine charcoal. I always fill or provide a foundation layer of Vine/willow charcoal before I use my charcoal pencil. That's important. Remember, the Vine or willow charcoal is going to function as a primer that's filling in the pores of the paper. When you watch me work, in the next couple of minutes, notice how I work in layers. I never try to immediately arrive at the correct answer. Instead, I put a little bit of vine charcoal down, I blend. I put a little bit of vine charcoal down, I blend. I put a little bit of vine charcoal down and I blend. So I'm building up to the right answer. I'm not arriving at anything immediately. That's important with charcoal. We don't arrive at the right answer automatically. It's done through lots and lots of layering. Now, I get to a certain amount of darkness with my vine charcoal, and then I move on to the charcoal pencil. You don't want to go too dark with your vine charcoal because it's going to become physically unstable. What this means is if you try to build layers on top of a thick coat of vine charcoal, let's say you really saturated the paper with lots of vine charcoal, if you try to put a pencil on top of that, it's just going to fall off. So be careful that you don't overdo it with the vine charcoal. Using the vine charcoal is very fun. So you're going to be tempted to want to use a lot of it, but you really can't use too much if you want to end up with a drawing that is physically stable. You're going to see me pretty soon start to use a pencil that, here it is, that's brown. That is my harder pencil. Now I use a harder or medium pencil when I want to create an edge that is sharp, or I want to have a lot of control over the value. The hard pencil is not going to leave like a dark mark, but it's going to leave a crisp mark. So that could be something that we use to our advantage. Like some edges, we'll want to allow these edges to be crisp and hard. And other edges, we want the edges to be smooth, soft, a gentle gradient with lots of value variation. So really look at the edge that you're trying to imitate. Is it a hard edge? Will it require something like a hard or medium pencil to create that really rigid edge? Or is it more soft and smooth? Typically soft, smooth edges create round form. And then harder edges, you'll find them like at the edges of form. So where a box meets the background, for example, that could be a harder edge. As a goal, I'm trying to make things look as three-dimensional as possible. That means prioritizing light mass and shadow mass, actively looking for a core shadow. That's something that most beginners need to be reminded of. Most beginners are not going to see a core shadow right away. A core shadow and the other elements of light for beginners is something that you have to actively search for. So when you look at your still life, ask yourself, okay, where is the core shadow? Where is my reflective light on this object? Where's my highlight? Is there a cast shadow? So actively ask yourself those questions. When you see me working, you may notice that I'm not including every single detail that I see that's present in the photograph. I wouldn't want to do that. I'm selective about what I choose to include in terms of details. Prioritize volume in your work and add details where you think there needs to be a little bit of visual interest in your piece. But we don't want the details to overwhelm the drawing. It would be very easy to prioritize detail and then have a drawing that seems hyper flat because we've forgotten about the light mass, the shadow mass, the core shadow, the highlight. So really do your best to prioritize making things feel dimensional. On the topic of detail, notice that on the fabric, a lot of students will ask me about creating creases. The general advice I would give for creases is for you to think about, okay, every crease is going to have a shadow, and every crease is going to have a corresponding light. And to try to see both elements, where is the shadow and where is the light. what you see me doing on the pear is you see me trying to imitate or better represent the shapes of the shadows that I see. So that doesn't only mean like how wide is it, how tall is it, what kind of curve is it, but it also means how sharp is the shadow's edge. What you see me start to put in here is something called dark reflective light. This can occur if you have a black object reflecting into a lighter object. So it's almost like that black color is reflecting into the shadow, creating a region that is quite dark in the shadow mass area. Watch as I develop the values in my pear. I always place marks going across the form and I blend in the opposite direction. So the direction of your mark matters. You always want to go across the form. Think about the cross contour line. That's the direction that you want to place your mark. For flat objects, I typically will make like a tabletop, that kind of flat object. I'll typically make marks that go horizontally to emphasize the flatness of the table.